started with what we're actually here to talk about tonight, this idea of the power of social media for your marketing. And I wanted to start it off kind of with an interesting anecdote that I was thinking about, and what actually made me think about it. A friend of mine was on Facebook earlier tonight joking about some of the, I have very many friends who are not necessarily Trump fans. So there's a lot of jokes and memes that are, and I have friends on both sides of the fence, but there's a lot of jokes and memes about the election. And one of them posted, where are you hiding tonight with all the craziness that, and I'm from DC, so I'm not far from the city where a lot of the silliness was going on earlier today. And, she posted, where are you going to be hiding out? And my comment was hiding, ? Warriors don't wait for the fight to come to them. And it made me think about how that's applicable to business, how that's applicable to how you market your business. And what I find with a lot of the people that I personally coach in my academy, and people that I've just coached in general, this applies to every facet of life, not just to building a business and marketing a business, but it's this idea that a warrior doesn't wait for the war to come to them. They take the fight to the enemy and they finish the fight. And so that I want you to have that same type of warrior's mentality as it relates to you approaching building your business, you approaching doing your marketing, whether it's on Facebook, it's on Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, it doesn't matter. I want you to take that warrior's approach to what you're doing. Do not wait for opportunities to come to you. I find a lot, especially the entertainers that I coach, and part of it is because a great many of them are very young. They don't have the life experience that, a person like me's had as an older person, or even, I coach a lot of people who are older than me. We've had a lot more experience on earth and a lot more professional experience to understand that opportunities usually do not just come and chase you down. And unfortunately, the media has a lot to do with that. The media, for example, will show you a superstar, and because you've never heard of them prior to the media showing them to you, you're like, wow, who's this overnight success that just popped up on the screen? And what you don't see is that this person's been working for 10 or 20 years before they got to that media spot. One of my favorite comedians is a guy named Dimitri Martin. I didn't hear about him until around 2006, 2007, and it was a Comedy Central special that he did. And I was like, this guy's amazing. He's exactly the type of comedian that I would watch all the time. And I did. I watched all his stand-ups. He had a TV show. I bought his, CDs or MP3s or whatever. And in my mind, I'm like, this dude just came out of nowhere. But as I got to know Dimitri from listening to interviews and watching his comedy, I came to realize by the time I saw him, he had already been in comedy for 10 years grinding when nobody knew his name. And so he didn't wait for opportunity to show up at his door. He took advantage of the skill set that he had and the opportunity that was out there in front of him. So when it comes to building your business and it comes to marketing on YouTube or Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, you really have to make, and that's the core of the heart of a warrior. You have to make opportunity where there is none. And that's going to require you first to make dope content, no matter what it is you're doing. And if you're a person who sells things as a part of a business, that means you need to make dope products and services. You just do. That's the core of it. If what you're creating is not dope, and especially if what you're creating is not something you would buy, then you're in trouble. If you wouldn't buy it, nobody else is going to buy it from you, and especially because you have to have a certain level of confidence to be able to sell a product to someone. You have to show them that you believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, you're not going to be able to fake your way through that. So it all starts with dope products and services. For my entertainers, it starts with dope content. All right. And then when your stuff is great, or dope as I like to call it, you can then get that in front of people and then go through the grind. I tell my students all the time, and it's not my quote. A lot of times I'll hear the people that I coach repeat it. It's not my quote. It's Coach Wooden's quote, that you have to fall in love with the grind, because life is the grind. And anything that you want to do that you're going to be successful at, you're going to spend a literal metric ton of man hours or woman hours doing what you do, first to get good enough at it for people to pay attention to you, but two, doing it enough for people's attention spans to finally hone in and pay attention to you, to hone in on you. Okay? So you have to behave with the heart and the mindset of a warrior. I'm going to pull up, I got some notes here. for the actual topic that I want to cover tonight. But I wanted to start off with that anecdote. And these topics are actually partially taken from the blog that's going to go live next week. But I've added some stuff to it for the purposes of this discussion. So social media, this overview, the power of social media to be used for your business, for your marketing, whatever the case may be. I need you to understand the very first principle of social media. I guess it's not the first principle of social media in general, but it's the first principle that I approach it with. And it's something that King Solomon said over 1,000, 2,000 years ago. What King Solomon said it was in the book of Ecclesiastes. It's actually taken from the Bible. I don't know if a lot of people know that this quote is taken from there. But the quote is, "There's nothing new under the sun." This is a person who had lived very long. He had ruled a lot of people. He had made a lot of executive decisions. And he realized that all the things that he was going through, all the things that he dealt with in his world and in his life were things that other people had gone through prior to him. And there's really, truthfully, nothing new under the sun. It's no different when it comes to social media and your marketing. A lot of people approach social media like it's the new hot thing. It's the new gimmick that people are using, and it's not. Social media is just the digital representation of the way humans have been communicating since the beginning of time. So, and by the way, in marketing, especially for those of you who have a background in marketing, you understand in your Marketing 101 class, you were taught that the best form of marketing, the most effective form of marketing, advertising, and promotion is still word of mouth. That has not changed since the beginning of time when they first discovered fire, and the dude that discovered it ran to tell everyone else. It was word of mouth. And so when you fast forward, let's just fast forward a couple thousand years from there to when we have the direct mail system, or what people call snail mail. Right? People are sending you letters or calling you on the phone. That's still word of mouth. But when the dawn of radio and television came into play, now you've got advertisements happening in a much different way. Advertisements are now being integrated with your entertainment, with your information that you're receiving. But at the end of the day, it's still just a platform. Radio is still just a platform that people are using to talk to one another. Well, in this particular case, they're not talking to one another. Radio is very much a one-way discussion mechanism where the broadcasters and the advertisers are talking to their audience. Okay? And then you bring in the influx of television, and now it's the very same thing. The only difference is now you are being talked to through video. And the same can be said for snail mail. When people are actually sending you a letter, it's really no different than what? Email. It's the same exact thing. It's just email is the digital representation of snail mail. And the interesting thing, the headlines and the marketing quotations and the language that's been used in the marketing, advertising, and promotion that happens these days, the stuff that was effective when David Ogilvy was writing the book is still very much effective today. The tactics that people use, in order to get you to pay attention to what they're selling are still very much the same today as they were back then. A lot of times when I get junk mail, I actually go through it because it gives me ideas for how, if this business is, working to get people's attention, let me see how they're doing it. When I walk into stores, like the grocery store or wherever you go, I'm always looking at the magazine aisles and the tabloids, not because I'm ever going to read that stuff, but because I'm always looking for another angle. What are they using to actually get the attention of the people in order to make a purchase, or in order just to get them to pay attention to the product or the service that they have? So the core principle here is that there is literally nothing new under the sun. All right. YouTube is just a digital representation of television that has a comment box at the bottom of it. And how is that not different from TV? Well, because a lot of advertisements or stuff that used to happen on TV oftentimes would say, call toll free 1-800 blah 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 to talk to this person. Like, even video games used to do that back in the day. They used to have helplines where you'd play the game, and on the box it would say, if you get stuck in the game, they used to have tip lines where you could call in. Now it's just YouTube and it's a comment box. Now it's just a website and it's a comment box. Twitter is the same thing. Twitter is just a digital representation of very quick, broadcasting. It's a very quick broadcasting, basically a media and a PR interface. All right. So none of these things are new, really. And the reason why I bring that up is I don't want you to think that in order to be successful on these platforms, you have to take this brand new approach that no one's ever thought of before. When the real truth of the matter is the same approaches that were working back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s are now, I will say some of the tone has changed. And some of the behaviors of the advertisers and marketers has to change because now these social media platforms make a connection. No longer is it just radio a one-way connection. Even radio wasn't always one way because people could call into the radio station and talk to the stars. But the point is now what you're doing is out in the open. If there's one change, if there's one thing that is new under the sun, it's that now what your company does, everybody's going to know about it within 24 hours if it's something significant, good or bad. So now you have to operate with a lot more empathy, with a lot more concern for your customers, your clients in mind than you probably would have had to in the 1950s. But the way that you convey the information in terms of the marketing language and the copy that works, a lot of these things don't evolve that greatly over time because we're still the same human beings with the same cognitive biases and the logical fallacies that we've had for the last 10,000 years. All right, so the other reason why I bring this up is that for those of you who are new to social media and this type of marketing, I don't want you to be afraid of it. I don't want you to be put off by, I don't want to mess with that because it seems complicated and hard. And it's not complicated. Yes, it is hard, but so is anything good that you want to do in your life. Nothing that you want to do in your life that's worth doing, that's going to lead to ultimate success is going to be very easy. Okay? But it's not necessarily complicated. It just takes a small amount of willingness and faith to have you invest the time to understand the nuances of each of the platforms because they are very different in a lot of ways. The way that I behave in a YouTube situation is going to be quite a bit different in many cases than what I do on Twitter. Right? It's a different platform. Facebook is the same way. There's things that I would do. It's not even things that I would do. There are things I can do on Facebook that YouTube physically will not allow me to do. Going back to my comments earlier about how YouTube is not a very good social platform. In fact, I think it's probably the weakest out of all the top social media platforms today. And what I mean by social is actually driving engagement on the platform. Hey, Telvin Howe is here. What's up, brother? So when you're trying to drive engagement on the platform, it's very hard because when you put up a show that's static, you may get 1,000 people that comment on it over time, but there's no way to really capture that as a conversation and notify the people when the conversation is happening unless you're tied to Google Plus, and then Google Plus doesn't always present it in a very easy way. So the point there is there's certain things that I can do in a Facebook environment that I can't necessarily do on YouTube. And being willing to learn the nuances of each of the platforms is something that will really help you in the long run. But that starts with understanding that there's nothing new under the sun. If you've been in print and radio, advertising and marketing for a very long time, I will tell you, I don't think those things are in even television advertising. I don't think those things are necessarily dying, but I think, especially for a small business, your ability to, one, make that marketing and that advertising effective, make that advertising actually drive a return on your investment, and then being able to measure the return on investment. I can't imagine any small businesses are able to tell when they put out a radio advertisement how many people actually walked into your store as a result of that radio advertisement. Whereas advertising on Facebook, for example, not only can I target exactly the people I want to see it, but then I can get metrics immediately that are showing me how people are engaging with it in a very detailed fashion. Okay, so I will say that there's nothing new under the sun, like King Solomon said. However, there are new and evolved ways of using these platforms, which in my opinion for the small business are very much more effective than some of the old media that's out there. So the bottom line there is don't be afraid. There's nothing new under the sun. This isn't complicated. It's just not easy. Don't be afraid to dive in and start learning about the platforms. And don't be afraid to dive in and experiment with the platforms. One of the beauties is if you're a small business that hasn't been using them, when you start using them, even if you're doing it wrong, nobody's going to know because nobody's going to be watching you, especially if you haven't learned a lot of the things that I coach on in our academy. If you haven't learned a lot of the science behind how the algorithms, for example, work on YouTube or the algorithms work on Instagram, which are very different algorithms, or Facebook, which is a very similar algorithm to Instagram. If you don't know those things yet, then you probably don't know how to take advantage of them. You don't know how to get your content in front of people. But the cool part is that's actually what we do. We actually help people do that here. So nothing new under the sun. The second thing I wanted to address, and you will hear a lot of people talk about this. I can't, if I'm being fully transparent, I've probably even talked about it at some time before. Smarter people than me educated me and helped me to know better. This idea that shorter is better, okay? It's not necessarily true. And what most people will tell you is shorter is better because attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and you have to be quick, otherwise people aren't going to pay attention to you. It's not necessarily the truth. I have done literally 7-hour coaching sessions where not a single person left, and everyone stayed to ask questions, okay? Shorter is not necessarily better. What you need to understand is what is the optimal content for the platform that you are working on. So not necessarily looking at the length of your content and not worrying about the attention span of your people. Because when you've targeted an audience properly, you're not going to have to worry about their attention span. If Louis C.K. sends me an email tonight and says, I'm going live in 20 minutes, I'm doing a free show on YouTube, I'm going to leave here. I'm going to say, thanks for coming, everybody. We're done. I'm going to watch Lou. And I'm going to watch every minute. That special could be 4 hours long. And unless I fall asleep because I'm tired, I'm watching every minute because I am his target audience. And when you understand how to target an audience properly with your products, your services, with your content, whether you're an entertainer, you know, even I have my brother Telvin here, who is a minister. It's the same thing. You know, your ministry has a design. There's an audience that's designed for the way that you present. And when you find those people, they will never leave you when you engage with them. So this shorter is better. I want to dispel that myth because so many of the people that I work with, especially in the YouTube space, are like, I need to make shorter and shorter videos so I get my engagement up and therefore my videos perform better in search. It's not necessarily true. It's making the content that your customer, your client, the person that you're entertaining, the person that you're ministering to wants to see, and making it the way they want to see it, whether it's short or long. So what you're looking for is optimizing your content, not trying to make it a certain length or making it short or making it extremely long. I used to have a saying when I used to write about video games that video games should be as long as they are fun. 99.9% of them are way longer than they are fun. And so what I think a lot of people are not figuring out is that why is my content up here in terms of length or duration and my audience stops paying attention here? Well, chances are your content wasn't dope enough to keep them engaged for this long. Your content stopped being dope for them right here. So what you need to figure out is how do I make dope content that my people really, really want, going back to the Louis C.K. example, because then they'll stick with you. And then when you get that retention, you get that watch time, you get that watch session, and we're talking about YouTube in this particular case, then you won't have to worry about YouTube promoting that video, especially when you're creating something that can spark conversation. I have actually broken the code on YouTube where I have criticized YouTube publicly very much for being an extremely weak social platform. And they are. They would admit to that. I'm not hating on them, it's the truth. But somehow I've cracked the code on my personal brand where I've got people actually engaging and writing page-long responses to the things that I'm creating. And the trick to cracking that code is I have made something that pushes people's buttons. And I don't mean in a bad way. I have made something that gets to the heart of the human soul and it touches them right where they are. And that then makes them want to engage. It makes them want to be a part. That's an extremely hard thing to do on YouTube, especially because so many creators are not focused in what they're doing. They're trying, especially most people I see when they come to any platform is I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do a cooking show and a gaming show. I'm going to be everything to everybody. And when you try to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to nobody, except to the 5 people like your mom and a couple of your friends that watch because they love you or maybe even just feel sorry for you. All right. So shorter is not necessarily better. All right. One of the other points, one of the other notes I had in here, and this isn't going to be a particularly long show. I've got 2 more points that I want to make. Do not underestimate the power of Facebook groups. All right, it's great to have your fan pages where you can drop content and then your fans can come in and they can make comments on the content that you're dropping, or like on a live show, they can comment live while I'm doing this. But what a group allows you to do, and the group doesn't necessarily have to be for your particular brand, but it can be about something that you are interested in, or something that as a part of your brand, you're very passionate about. So I'll use Telvin as an example. As a minister, he may have a favorite book of the Bible, right? And he can make a Facebook group that is, dedicated to Ephesians. We're the lovers of Ephesians. And then other people that find that to be a very powerful book and want to talk about it can come into that group and have a conversation. What does that allow you to do as the person who is the marketer or the brand owner? Well, one, it allows you to bring people together and engage with them, which then builds trust. And at the end of the day, it builds love. And I use the word love a lot in my marketing. I know it rubs some people the wrong way, but it's because they don't understand how I define it. Love is not some touchy-feely, kissy thing, romantic thing. Love is the willingness to do for other people, even sometimes to your own detriment, putting other people first, okay? Being willing to sacrifice for the better of other people. And so when the people who are interested in your brand realize that you are that person, they will stick with you. I literally have people that when I started as an entertainer and I completely transitioned into being a business where I'm selling product, which is sometimes the kiss of death on social media. I have people that have no interest in my business. They still stick around and they still give me advice and they still watch the videos and they'll comment on them because I've built brand insistence. And what a group allows you to do is do exactly that. It gets people together to talk with you. But the beautiful thing is then they start speaking amongst one another. The other beautiful thing as a marketer is now you've got data. You can go in and look at your group, figure out what are people talking about the most? What are people talking about the least? What do the people here love the most? What do they love the least? So that when you eventually start to create products or services, whether it's books, it's coaching courses, doesn't matter, you know exactly what your audience cares about because you gave them a place to commune with you, but also to commune with one another. So do not discount the power of Facebook groups. They can be very valuable to you. I would say, as a side note there, kind of in parentheses, also, do not neglect the power of Google Plus groups. Now, I will say without question that in terms of just being a social platform, I'm not talking about the power of the platform, I'm not talking about marketing, I'm talking about just hanging out with friends. I like Google Plus more than all of the other social media platforms because the way it's organized and the way it works makes it very easy to interact with other people. Whereas Facebook's algorithm is always like if one of your friends makes a video, that's going to the top of the feed. All right, even if it's a video like somebody filming their dinner, and I'm like, I don't want to watch this. But in Google, it is what it is. It's what is there is what is there. And the example I'll use is don't neglect Google groups either. I started a video game group many years ago, and it took a long time to catch on. But over time, I brought some people in, or some people I didn't bring them in, but they were attracted to it. And they got very active in the community. And I went to them, I said, look, I'm about to really get out of the entertainment part of business and move into really doing marketing. I had already been doing that for years, even as an entertainer, but I was like, I'm really about to jump into doing what I've done for clients for years privately in social media and in digital marketing versus just building things for clients. And I was like, so this entertainment piece of me, like writing for video games, making video games videos, is going to go away because I'm not going to have the time to be able to do that. And frankly, I had video games, I was kind of burnt out on the games themselves. So I was like, I have to move on, but I want you guys to take over. And these gentlemen took over and they blew it up. Like I couldn't have done. They've gone out and formed other communities that are now filtering into it. So we've got this every month. We get an influx of people. And I'm still a member of the group. I still go in there and chat with them whenever I can. But it's just the beauty of it. It took us a couple years to get it right. But when I found some people who were very social and very committed to the brand, they went out then as the influencers and brought people in, and I didn't even have to. All right. So do not discount the power of your Facebook and Google Plus groups. All right. Last point for tonight. And then I'll let you guys get on with your Friday evening. Hey, we got Steven here. What's up, my friend? Glad to have you. So the last point for tonight is being politically correct is boring. All right. Now, I've always believed that. I hate having to be politically correct. Now, I don't hate respecting people. I don't hate if somebody is offended by something, not saying it to them. Okay. But I don't like being politically correct. But what does that have to do with marketing? Very specifically, when you read books, and Steven's here and Nate's here, so they've probably heard this speech 100 times. When you read books like Contagious, which is Professor Jonah Berger's years and years of study of what makes things viral. I should probably leave that on because now you can actually see me. He wrote a book called Contagious, which explains the science behind what makes things viral. Okay, and one of the things, frankly, that makes things viral is controversy. Now, I'm not talking about intentionally posting something that's highly offensive or that's hating on other people, but something that's polarizing. Okay, you like Coke, somebody else likes Pepsi. You can build into, and it's not just for your marketing, for your content as well. In your content, you can have some things that are polarizing. So for example, I'll put this in the context of social media. One of the things that drives Instagram is what I call the bot game. What is that? That's people going out to a service. These are app developers who have created basically these programs or these algorithms that can manipulate Instagram and automatically follow people for you, automatically leave comments and like photos. That is a very popular practice in the world of marketing. And one of the easiest ways you can tell if someone's doing it, you look at their Twitter or their Instagram, and you look at their followers versus who they're following, and if those numbers are almost identical, chances are those folks are in the bot game. Not necessarily always, but chances are they are using bots. I am against using bots. Not because I think it's ethically wrong, even though using bots on Instagram is technically against their terms of service. So I guess there it is ethically wrong. But that's not what turns me off to it. What turns me off to using bots is that it's simulating engagement. And I've been telling people for years, I'd rather have one engaged person than I'd rather have one highly engaged person following me than have 1,000 people following me who aren't paying me any mind. Because even though the numbers game dictates that out of that 1,000, I could probably get somewhere upwards of 10 to pay attention to me, which means that's 10 potential sales of products and services. I still believe that one highly dedicated person, especially if you built brand insistence, they're going to buy everything you ever put out. So at the end of the day, they may be a more valuable customer to you than the other 10 people that you can bring in. Now, that's not to say that you shun growth or that you don't try to grow. It's that for me, I have always put engagement above just sheer growth. And part of the problem, especially when you're in the business of marketing, you don't want to walk into a business and say, I'm going to help you build your Twitter, and you only have 20 people following you. Unless you were able to explain, look, the way that I operate, these people who are coming to you who have 100,000 followers, they're not doing it organically, and not just organically, because I believe in you can pay to get people's attention if you do it the right way. Facebook's very powerful and effective at that. But I don't want to pay and then get fake followers. And in other words, I don't want people following me that are just following me as a part of an algorithm. They don't really care about what I have to say. All right, so I don't just want raw numbers. I can walk in and say, yeah, I only have 20 people following me. But man, this is something I've been able to say for years, because people used to look, for example, at my YouTube as a coach and like, well, how come all these other people have, thousands and thousands and thousands of followers and you only have a couple thousand? I said, because of the way I do my business. I said, but ask these people, out of their thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, how many they convert into paying customers. And let's exchange conversion rates, right? And I guarantee you, and not everybody, because some of my mentors have the thousands and thousands and thousands. They're square. But some of these other people, how many of these people with several 100,000 to 1 million followers are actually converting sales? There's people with hundreds of thousands of followers who are not even making Wendy's money. And I have my little piddly, but I'd say it in air quotes, 10 or 15,000 people following me, but then I'm converting people into, I'm converting opt-ins and sales at such a high rate that I don't have to work a tenth as hard as Mr. 100,000 subscribers who's having to churn out so much content. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that person's goal is to churn out content and they love what they're doing, then that's totally cool. But my point is, There's different ways to skin the cat, and I am an advocate of having really, really dedicated people involved in what I'm doing and focusing. Once I find someone that's dedicated, I invest so much of my time and energy into helping them and squaring them away versus just trying to go out and get, oh, I need a couple more thousand people to follow me. I don't. All right. They'll come. Don't worry. It'll come. But I prefer, there's an Amish saying that a fence that goes up fast also falls down fast. I'd rather put the fence up, lay the foundation properly, and get the right, the right poles, the right sticks. Obviously, I'm not a construction guy. I'm not using the right terms, but I'd rather the fence go up properly and take a little more time and then last forever than just be a flash in the pan because I chased empty growth. All right, that's what I have for you all tonight. If there's any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'm actually tracking them here on my phone, but I'll also track them here on Facebook. I'll pull that up as well. So if you got questions, you got comments, go ahead and leave them. If not, we'll go ahead and shut down, and I'll thank you for your time. This has been it's really exciting. I like the way Facebook works. I like being able to see you all right here on screen using the Facebook app. Looking at you, YouTube. Don't know why you don't have your mobile app together yet, but whatever. But it's, like I said, it's a pleasure always to serve you guys. This video will also go up on YouTube, I think, once it's all said and done as a part of next week's blog, which won't have quite as much detail as what we talked about tonight. So it's good that you were here live. Nate says, great stuff, man. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, as always, for being a big-time supporter of what we do here. Same to you, Steve. Same to you, Telvin, brother. Telvin, if you're still watching, man, it's very good to see you, man. I'm glad you came around. I love you, dude. I hope everything's going well for you. Anyway, friends, I think I'm going to go ahead and end here. I don't see any questions. Love all you guys. Remember that we are stronger than I, and I am now working to put time back in your hands. Peace.